Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Reviewing Comics with me, your host, Alexander Turbin. Today we're going to be going over the Human Gargoyles #1 from Eternity Comics. But before we get into that, I'd like to show you some of my own stuff. This is Random Access. It's a full-size, full-color, 12-page comic book that I produce every month for my Patreons and also to go onto my website. But you can get these at patreon.com/Alexander Turbin, or you can check these out at my website, alexanderturbin.com, or you can just message me at alexturbin04401 at Instagram, or alexanderturbin, alexturbin04401 at yahoo.com, which is my email. They have backups by Chris Knox and Paul Courtjohn, but those are random artists. I mean, we have different artists every month. Excuse me. You can also check out Mutandis and The Forlorn and all kinds of stuff at my website, alexanderturbin.com. But now that we're done with the shameless promotion, we can put those away and we can focus on the Human Gargoyles. I've been wanting to review this for quite some time, and I've kind of never really thought I had the right perspective or the right timeline or whatever, for whatever reason. But I've always wanted to do this. It's been in my collection for quite a while, and it's I don't really remember reading it back in the day when I first got it, because I definitely did get this back in the day when it came out. It came out in 1988, actually. And I did get it then. I don't remember reading it, but that could just be because it didn't really leave a heavy impact on me. One of the things I love about it is it's gargoyles, and one of the scariest movies. It was like a TV movie, I think. I don't ever think it actually went to the theaters, but it was I think it was called Gargoyles, or The Gargoyles, or Day of the Gargoyles, Night of the Gargoyles, something like that. Anyway, it was a TV movie, and it scared the shit out of me. And I just always remembered that movie and how scary it was, and to this day it's one of those things that I look back and I'm like, whoa, that was crazy scary. It probably, if I saw it now, I'd probably like laugh hysterically thinking that it wasn't scary, but to 8-year-old 10-year-old me, it was scary as hell. So I don't actually have any other connections to gargoyles other than the TV show. I watch every once in a while. I don't really have a great love for the show, but I do love the characters and stuff and the aesthetics and everything. So I do kind of have that inclination towards the gargoyles. And gargoyles are cool anyway. They're just these fascinating creatures that are on top of buildings, and they look badass and stuff. So that's cool. It's written by Alan Hewitson and drawn by Melo Cintron. You can get this comic on eBay for about $5 or $6, so it's really pretty cheap. And I believe there are either 4 or 5 issues that it went to. Alan Hewitson, actually, I was looking up his biography or autobiography or whatever it is on Google, and he was kind of an interesting dude. He started out in comics as Stan Lee's assistant. He called up Stan Lee and they had this conversation, and he wanted a job as a writer for Marvel, and so instead he became Stan Lee's assistant, and for a long time he was just his assistant, and he would actually answer no prize comments and stuff like that and get his lunch or whatever assistants do. But the fact that he worked on no prizes was pretty cool. But then he went on to work on horror magazines like Eerie and all those other early 70s, late 60s kind of books. And I think that's where he really got into his horror niche. Melio Cintron, I don't know if I said that right. I hopefully did. He actually is a fantastic artist, and you can tell from the art in the comic that he's fantastic, even just looking at it from what it is. But you can look at, like, he's done tons of Star Trek novel covers, Star Wars covers, all kinds of fantasy book covers. So he really has a great extensive library of art that he's done, and he's really fantastic. When I was reading this, I hadn't actually Googled them before, but some of these things I was like, man, that is just too good. Maybe maybe he copied some of this stuff, or just had such huge references that it wasn't really his or something like that. But now that I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, or now that I'm thinking about it, I think he just really was this good as of an artist, and really he probably had he gone in more into comic books, because I think he kind of did this a little bit and maybe a couple other things, but he really didn't. Comics didn't grab a hold of him like he did so many other artists. But there's a lot of artists that started on comics like Frank Frazetta and then moved on to illustration and stuff. So that's probably the path that he took. And he just didn't have the love for the comic book medium that so many of us have. So we got to get into the story because it's a lengthy story and it's got a lot to it. So it's the one thing, my one gripe, well, I'll get back to that, as you know. I'll go through the story and then kind of flashback and talk about the writing and the art and so what I think of it. So this is a Eternity Comics, and this is 1988, but it's also when they were a division of Malibu Comics. So this actually might be a property of Marvel. I don't know what is the property of Marvel. I once had one of the Eternity Comics guys contact me and told me that most of the Eternity stuff was owned by each of the artists and the writers. So maybe this is owned by them. Maybe it's owned by Marvel. I don't know, but it's pretty cool that this is part of the whole big conflagration, or whatever word that I'm thinking of, where it's just like a whole bunch of little indie comic publishers going under one roof, which is pretty cool. So it starts out where they're on a church and there's these priests that are talking and stuff, and they're having lunch every day or whatever, and they just have these different conversations about poetry and life and God and stuff. And these gargoyles are just on the top of the church, and then one day out of nowhere they come to life. They become flesh and blood. So they're no longer stone. They're just flesh and blood. This story really is fast paced and it kind of jumps from place to place. And so it tells you a lot about what happens and it doesn't show you, which is kind of one of the bad things about the book, where that is kind of one of the tenets of comics is show, don't tell. There's obviously different times when you don't do that, or you do rather tell and not show, but it has to be specific instances, and it has to really, you really have to have a good reason for doing it. And I don't know whether I like the telling and not showing, where they flash to where they're in a farmhouse. They're from Europe. They're in Europe. And they're in a farmhouse and they're having a kid, and they've done some kind of battle with some kind of creature. And that's what it says is they went from their place on the church and to some place, and they had like this battle with these creatures, but it actually doesn't show any kind of a battle with the creatures or anything. And then the story kind of goes into a little bit of a more traditional narrative approach, where the gargoyles find a circus, a freak circus, and they join the cast of freaks, and that's when the wife has the baby, and it goes into detail on how nice the freak circus is and how everybody loves them, but there's also one bad apple in the whole bunch. And so this guy says, go off and do your shopping or whatever you need to do. I'll take care of your baby. And this is also one of the parts where it really kind of rushes the story, and it's a little disconjoined a little bit. He puts them on display. He puts the baby on display to make some extra money, I guess. I'm not sure. But then some people come around. Apparently they just kind of know things, because they're Satanists. They're cultists and they're Satanists. And it actually says they are cultist Satanists. It's very blatant. There's no subtleties whatsoever. They are cultist Satanists. And so they grab the baby and kind of pushes the dude that was showing off the baby. And then right off the bat, the gargoyles come home. The male is infuriated. I can't. Edward, I guess is his name. But I didn't think that was really his name. I thought the gargoyles were named something different, but it is Edward. It's Edward, and I can't remember the name of the female. So he's about to rip the circus owner. I think he's the either the owner or the ringleader or something like that. He's about to tear him limb from limb, but then the wife says, "No, we have to be smart about this. We have to get this guy to tell us where the baby is and what's going on." So he sends them to the cultists, and lo and behold, they go to the cult leaders, and they're having this ritual, and they've summoned Satan. It actually doesn't. It says that they've summoned Satan, but I think in the later chapters, this is a creature of Satan. It's not actually Satan. Satan has just sent this creature to attack the two human gargoyles, although he's actually talking like he is Satan. So he goes on. Satan just doesn't shut up, and it actually says later on that Satan has sent lots of monsters to attack me, and then one in particular, which was trying to talk me to death. So it kind of has a little bit of humor, and but it's like a kind of a nonchalant, dark humor, I guess. So Satan shows up. Don't know really if it is Satan or whatever. But Satan says that the child isn't even his, and that they are actually his because he breathed life into them, and so they're not God's creatures or whatever; they're Satan's creatures, and the child is actually his. And then the gargoyle gets angry, and he attacks the creature or Satan, and so that's why I'm thinking that it's not actually Satan, and in fact it's just one of Satan's creatures that he sent up to the world of men or whatever. So there's like an aftermath of the battle, which I don't know if that's what they talk about here. Where he says, weeks ago they themselves were born ancient, but the word born is incorrect enough. When they stood over the shallow evil things Edward had conquered near Friedbeer, they then spoke in hollow terms of tomorrow. So I don't know if that's this battle or some other battle previously. I think it is some other battle previously, which they never talked about ever again. But Edward, and he grabs his wife and his kid. I can't remember his name. Adam. I can't remember what his name is. His name is. No, I can't remember. I can't find it. Anyway, off we go. So they decide that the circus, I guess, is blown up or whatever, and so they know they're going to be hunted by the villagers because that's just what happens. And this also doesn't actually say a time period. It says, I think it might be 50s or early 40s or mid 50s or something like that, because one of the characters says something about the war and then somebody says which war. So I think he's talking about World War II or Korea, but I think that he's talking about late 40s, early 50s, something like that, and I think it's World War II that they're talking about. So I think that's the time period that we're in. They decide to go to America, and so it switches completely to them being on a ship, and it goes into detail about how they steal food from they stow away on the ship, and they steal food to survive, and they're in cramped little quarters, and they massage each other's muscles to keep cramps away and all this kind of stuff. And then as soon as they reach shore, they fly off. I don't know why it takes them so long to fly. Why couldn't they fly to America? But I guess flying, takes a lot of energy. Birds don't fly from America to Europe. So anyway, they end up in New York City, and they decide that they have no prospects of getting a job. They're illegal aliens. They're on the run, and so he decides that he has to steal food to give their baby. Andrew, that's his name. The baby's name is Andrew. So Andrew is hungry. He's got to steal. So he gets caught, and the police go after him, shooting at him and stuff. And he finally gets away from the cops, hiding in and out of alleyways, and he goes and finds their alleyway, and he gives the baby some food, and then this dwarf just kind of pops up out of nowhere and offers to help the duo and the baby. So he brings him back to his apartment, and lo and behold, they're Satanists. They are cultists, Satanists, and they were told by Satan himself that they were going to be there. So that's why he sent the cultists to get Edward and his girlfriend and his wife and the baby. So then the cultists, they have like a dialogue between them where Andrew or Edward actually talks about the battles he's had with different creatures and stuff, and Satan and stuff. So another creature appears, because I guess that's what cultist Satanists do. They make creatures appear, and it's got like these tentacles and stuff, and it just attacks Edward, and Edward attacks it, and they just kind of have this fight scene, and then it zips to a courtroom where the human gargoyle, is placed in front of the judge, and the judge is very sympathetic, and he's like, "You're illegal. You've done all of this stuff. It was petty theft, and I'm going to give you 30 days in jail, but I'm going to commute that sentence to another time frame, and I'm going to find you a job, and you're an illegal alien, but if you can tell me in 90 days that you're contributing to the American way of life, then I'll help you the immigration place, and you can get your immigration status and become an American citizen." So he gets him a job on the docks, and he becomes this is just him walking to get the job and stuff, and the judge and everything. And so he goes to the docks, and he becomes a worker on a tugboat. And the tugboat moves all of the ships in and out of the harbor in New York City. And he's having a good time, and he's enjoying his job. And they're actually having a good time together with their baby. They find an apartment, and the apartment is pretty good, and it's affordable. It's $133 a month, which, that's pretty good. Apparently at that time. So they find it, and then something happens. I don't understand this panel whatsoever. And the landlord was beaten up, and he tells the gargoyle that it was actually the cultist Satanists that have found them, and they want to destroy the human gargoyles. And Edward is like, "I'm very sorry. This is all my fault." And so another creature appears, just kind of out of nowhere, giant tentacles. This guy really loves his H.P. Lovecraft, mixed in with his Catholicism and his religious beliefs and stuff. So he mixes in some H.P. Lovecraft stuff, which is kind of cool. And so Edward fights the creature, and then finally he's like, "I've got to go on the offensive." So he goes to the tugboat, and I'm not entirely sure what happens, but the squid or the tentacle is all in pieces. He uses the tugboat to, I assume, back up and use the propellers of the tugboat and chop up the creature. But then you see the newspaper, "Thing battles tentacle in New York Harbor." So Edward is scared that people are going to attack him because they're getting this fame and notoriety and stuff. So they have to go off into America. And the wife says, "What about the court date in 90 days? We need to be back here to get our legal status." And he says, "We'll be back in 90 days. We just have to get out of here for a little while till things simmer down a little bit." And that's how it ends, them going into the American Midwest or whatever. So let's look at the writing. The Human Gargoyles was written by Alan Hewitson, as I said, who is worked for Stan Lee as an assistant and stuff like that. So he probably got some writing tips from Stan Lee and some of the other writers and artists and stuff from Marvel. But what he did not get was any kind of patience in writing his stuff. Maybe that's because of the artist. Maybe that's just how this was mushed in. This is actually originally appeared in Nightmare number 10, 13, and 14. So I don't know what that is, if that's an Eternity comic or if that's some other kind of horror comic back in the 70s. I don't know if this is just an old reprint from a 70s book. If anybody has any idea about the Human Gargoyles, please let me know, because it's a fascinating book, and these fascinating artists and writers, because they are so talented. They're very talented. The writer, all of this prose and stuff is very nice. I really enjoy it. I enjoyed reading all of this stuff. If it wasn't for the me being baffled by so much of the stuff being told and not shown, because it really, if this was like a book or a short story or something like that, I probably would have enjoyed it more, because he could have added his own little quirky stuff into the novelization of it. But the art just doesn't overcome the the disjointed part of the writing, because he doesn't have any patience. He doesn't explain anything in a way that makes any kind of sense, and he just throws things on top of things, like, hey, now there's cultists, now there's Satanists. There's no introduction to these characters. There's like hardly any introduction. The circus people are a little bit introduced, but none of the actual characters have any names. They're except for this guy, the bad guy. But none of the characters there, apparently they are really good friends with these circus people, and yet they don't have any kind of real relationship with them. They don't have any names. They don't see, so there's no kind of connection with it. This is super event kind of thing, and where there's no interpersonal relationships whatsoever, or communication between the characters at all. And just the fact that he throws on Satanists, cultists, it's just so super blatant, and it's very unbelievable. And that's really a shame, because the writing is very, it's enjoyable to read. It's not like Todd McFarlane and Spawn. This is really a joy to read. I'm just saying that he throws in a lot of prose in his first, especially in his first 10 issues or whatever, because he thinks that's what writers do. They just write a lot and something good will come out of it. This guy does write a lot. There's a lot of prose. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of things. Excuse me. There's a lot of things going on, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense, because there's, like I said, excuse me again, there's just no patience. There's no distribution of any kind of knowledge about what's going on, either past or future or present or whatever. It just kind of happens. People show up, people leave, things happen, like the dwarf. The dwarf just pops up out of nowhere. There's no, which apparently Satan told him that they were going to be there. So that kind of makes sense a little bit. But it also doesn't. This also could be an editing problem, because if this was a reprint from something else and put into an Eternity comic, maybe this was just edited poorly. And I have that actually for a fact, because this panel doesn't make any sense, and it's all cut off improportionately, which doesn't make any sense. I think this is actually reprinted from the comic itself and not reprinted from the original art. I think they just have, see the borders on the top and the bottom, and the fact that, look at the way that the pages are put together. It's just all disjointed. It doesn't make any sense, which I'll come to the art in a minute, and that's really a travesty. But also this panel here, like this border is all cut off, and it's completely wonky and doesn't make any sense. This was supposed to be the gray tones and the shadows and the shading should have been put in. I think this is the artist's rendition of this before he goes in and puts the blacks in and the shadows and all of the other stuff that makes his art really great. But I mean, look at this line work. I kind of wish that the whole book was just line work, because his line work is fantastic, and his artwork, he's obviously a really talented artist. But so much of the story being incomplete or whatever could have been the editing. I don't think so. I think they took it page per page and panel for panel, which really would not lean towards the editing being the culprit for the disparity between the story and anything like that. The dialogue is very good. I do like the characters. I like Edward. He's very straightforward and forthright and stuff, and he's kind of a heroic character, and that comes through in the writing. But it's just the plot is just so, like I said, disjointed and fact or event driven, that it just really, there's no way to become emotionally attached to any of these characters, and the fight scenes are relatively boring and not really have any kind of worth whatsoever. As far as the artist, I think the artist is fantastic. I love his gray tones, even being reprinted in an improper way. And I really truly think that they just printed it from a comic. And I don't even think that I think they took to the comic book to a printer, either a printer or a photocopy thing, and just photocopied. They laid it down on the photocopier, and that's why the pages are so messed up. Because often when you don't, if it's not like a completely flat surface, then the like you do this, and then it's going to have like a weird crease in the middle, and that just really kind of throws the printing process out the window, and it's really wonky. So it's really, really too bad. But also, if you're taking a photocopy, it's like when you take a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy, the detail loses so much of its, each iteration becomes less detailed and more blurry and more funky. So I would really like to see, I'm going to go back and get these Nightmare 10, 13, and 14, and really look at how the gray tones on these panels and pages really are, really, if they're like they are, or if they're have a little bit more subtleties. Because when you work with gray tones, you really need that subtlety. You can't just go from black to white. You have to have that 5, 6, 7 layers of a gray tone wash that leads to something darker or something lighter. Yes, you do want those high whites to really kind of show off the light and the shadows and stuff like that. But you also need the real rich grays of the work. And plus, there's also another thing that everybody knows that I hate. But one of the things that I really don't like is the panel layout in some of these. It's totally fine if you're an artist and you're putting the page layout, you're doing a full 2-page spread, and you go from one page to the next, and it's supposed to go like this. But you have to plan it out so that people know that that's what you're doing. I had no idea that I was supposed to read it from here to here to here to here. I thought I was reading it from here to here, so that's why I was a little confused about the story, because I just didn't know where to read. And eventually I did figure out I was supposed to read from all the way from left to right to left to right, from page to page. But by then I had already been highly confused, and I was didn't really enjoy that part of it. So he is a good narrative artist, but the panel layout is a little wonky. Again, it could have been the editing of the reprint, or it could have just been him, because these panels, they don't have any depth. They don't have any differential space between them, because when you're making a comic book, the size and the structure of the panel makes so much a difference as to where you're supposed to read and what you're supposed to do. And he also does my most hated thing. Again, look at the bleed, and it's completely off center. It's off kilter. So they definitely just grabbed a comic book from somewhere and just reprinted it, and it's really too bad. I'm looking for the page. Here it is, the dreaded arrow. I hate the arrow. Let me know if you guys hate the arrow as much as I do, because if I'm the only one and you guys are totally fine with the arrow, then I will shut up about it. But if you think the arrow sucks as much as I do, then let me know, please. So you've got the arrow here and the arrow here, and it's easily fixable with these word balloons, because if you have a word balloon between the panels, that's how you know to go from one panel to another, or that can be a distinction of going from one panel to another is going from word balloon to word balloon. So that is just a travesty, and I'm really I hate that part of it. Obviously, there's a lot of work in this comic, and there's a lot to love about it. The artwork is really fantastic. It's very realistic. I love the gray washes. Even reprint of a reprint from a comic book, you can see that the gray washes and the gray tones are really fantastic. The only problem I have here is the fight scenes. I don't know if that's the artist or the writer or a combination of the two. The creature just kind of shows up. You don't actually see any creature, and all you do is see is him punching once or twice. You don't see any kind of action. There's no pull away shot. When you're doing an action scene, you have to have a variety of angles. As I've said multiple times, you have to have a variety of angles and positions in the body. You have to have, pulling back a punch and showing the punch. And so, that does none of this. So any of the action or all of the action in this is very poor. And I don't know if that's the artist or the writer's fault. The artist is obviously somebody that does quieter moments better, and he's not familiar or that's not his forte, is great action scenes. He probably, if he does other books, I don't know if he did issues 2 through 5, if there is a 5, or 2 through 4 or whatever. Maybe he gets better at the action scenes. Maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, the Human Gargoyles, it's kind of a letdown for me, and I was really looking forward to reading this and going through it and stuff. Kind of a letdown. Oh yeah, Madman. Remember Madman from that old horror anthology he did, and I was kind of wondering about the other stuff that he did. He did the cover for this. I don't know if this is a reprint of a reprint, like the interiors, or this is new. But 88 it says. So I think he actually did this for it, and this is a fantastic cover. I'm even okay with the bright red lettering logo. It kind of goes with it. I kind of wish it was a little bit more muted, but this is a fantastic cover. I love it. I love the colors and the layout and the scheme, and just it's fantastic. And I really love this Madman guy. So I'm going to give this. I really wish I could give it more, because if I feel like if they did it again, it would be done better. Maybe it was just I don't know what it was, but I actually think that this could have been a really great comic, but it wasn't. It wasn't. There's just too many flaws. There's too many things that go wrong with it, and it's really too bad. I'm going to give this a 7. If I see more Human Gargoyles, I'm not going to buy them. In the dollar bin, I'm not going to buy them. I have no ambition to see what happens to Edward and his wife as they travel into America. And just knowing or highly suspecting that this is a copy of a comic, not even original pages, republished, reprinted, but it's a copy of a copy, really kind of makes me sad. I'm not going to say disgusted, because it is what it is. It's a reprint, but it's really kind of too bad. It's kind of too sad. But I'm going to give it a 7. I could go worse, but there's a lot of stuff that I do like about the writing, and I like the art a lot. It is really kind of enjoyable, and the cover's great, and so that's what I'm saying. So Human Gargoyles, 1988 from Eternity Comics. Yeah, I give it a 7. Let me know if you guys have any of these copies and what you think of it, and if you have any recommendations for other Eternity Comics that I should be reviewing. Because, as I said, I'm going to get into collecting all of the Eternity Comics and all of the comics that are under that giant banner of all of those companies: the Adventure, the Aircell, the Eternity, Malibu. Maybe not Malibu. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. But I'm going to get them all. And so let me know what you guys think about this comic. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell and giving me a thumbs up. I always appreciate a thumbs up, especially if you like and want to see more indie comics being reviewed, because as far as I know, I'm the only one doing old indie comics. So thanks for watching, and have a great week, and I will catch you next time, and keep on creating.